You mentioned some of the effects of this Angelenos fleeing, the lack of diversity, or gentrification leading to just more white dominance in these areas. Can you give us some statistics on those impacts of this housing emergency?
Yeah, so last year, for the first time, LA County actually lost population. And the data shows that for the most part, people who were leaving were people making less than $50,000 a year. We also have lost our Black population in Los Angeles. Our Black population has gone down by 20% over the last 2 decades. And despite the fact that Black Angelenos make up just 9% of our city population, they make up almost 40% of our homeless population, showing that this housing crisis is actually playing out incredibly unequally across different sectors of the city. And I think this is something that we really need to be focused on as we're thinking through how to construct policy going forward.
How are local governments criminalizing homelessness and poverty instead of helping to alleviate it?
I worked at City Hall in 2014, and I wrote a report about how the city was responding to homelessness then. At that time, there were 23,000 people experiencing homelessness, and the city was actually spending already over $100 million responding to homelessness across various departments. And my report actually found that almost 90% of that spending was going towards putting homeless individuals in jail, which is a staggering percentage. LAPD has historically been our first contact for people experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles, and really continues to be to this day. They are the ones that people who are on the streets see. They are the people who actually know homeless individuals by name, unfortunately. In reality, we should be building a completely different kind of system, a system where the people who are interacting most regularly with people experiencing homelessness are outreach workers, mental health caseworkers, and people who are charged with actually getting them off of the streets, getting them the services that they need to actually make their journeys off of the streets. We are doing the opposite here in Los Angeles, and that is a deliberate choice. That's the way in which we've designed our system. But a lot of that has come from the political context in which our response to homelessness came. Over and over again, our elected representatives have shown that they want to be able to respond immediately to citizen complaints, to resident complaints. So a constituent calls them about a homeless encampment that's on their block, and a council member wants to be able to respond immediately. And the way they want to be able to respond is by calling LAPD. What we need to do is create a system through which we are effectively getting people out of homelessness. And the only way to do that, the only way, because putting someone in jail is not getting them out of homelessness. The only way to do that is by providing services first. And that has to be the first line of response in the city.
I can't even imagine how much worse the issue would be if charities weren't involved to help alleviate hunger. The fact that police are the first point of contact, not social workers, not other people to initiate resolutions with the homeless community, and also just the criminalization of poverty in general. I mean, ticketing homeless people, putting them in jail, ticketing people for sleeping in their cars, making that illegal from Silicon Valley to here. People are not aware of the crackdown on poverty here and what effect that has on the community. Here in Los Angeles, new methods are being used kind of as a testing ground. I know that we were talking before about this alleged proposal from Donald Trump and Carson to essentially export the homeless community to camps, detention camps on the outskirts of town, and raise Skid Row to the ground. Can you talk more about this and how devastating this would be?
I also feel incredibly frustrated because the kinds of solutions that the Trump administration is proposing for homelessness, a crackdown, forced detentions, these are things that we wouldn't need if our city would just do their job. In the absolute failure of our city to provide the kind of services that we have the resources to provide at this moment, to create systems which keep people housed, which help people who are falling into homelessness to quickly and effectively get off the streets quickly. We have all of the resources that we need through taxes, through our two measures that we passed recently, we have all the resources that we need to be doing this. And in our failure to create the system, we have now allowed for a discussion where a much worse, a much more hostile intervention is being planned and considered seriously. And that to me is absolutely outrageous.
And I think you're running for city council on this idea of drastic, immediate change, implementing some of these policies that can be taken at a local level to improve the situation. Can you elaborate on what those would be?
So I think we can do a few things that can immediately address this issue. One is that we can deliver services effectively to people experiencing homelessness right now. I've proposed a series of community access centers in each neighborhood across the city. These are places where people who are experiencing homelessness can come in, have a cup of coffee, take a shower, feel welcomed, but also speak to a caseworker and start the process of getting their paperwork and moving off of the streets. I also think that these are also effective ways to help people who are experiencing mental illness or experiencing addiction to actually make sustainable steps towards moving off the streets. If you have mental health caseworkers who are housed at the neighborhood level, who get to know people who are experiencing homelessness in their neighborhood by name, that is the only way to build up a relationship of trust that will help someone along their journey back into housing, that will help someone along their journey back into mental health care. Right now, the system is designed not to do that. In fact, it's designed in many ways to terrorize people who are experiencing homelessness. Because the only time that you see the government or you see representatives from outreach organizations, from home service organizations, is when your stuff is being thrown away, is being through a very violent sweep. We also need to do a much better job of making sure people aren't falling into homelessness. We actually housed many more people last year than we ever have, because we're spending a lot more on this issue. But because so many more people fell into homelessness, our numbers increased huge amounts across the city by 16% in 1 year, and in this district by 53% in 1 year. Huge, huge increases. And I think what we need to be doing is to make sure that across the city, when you're having tens of thousands of evictions, making sure that people have access to a lawyer. Because when you have access to a lawyer, you can stay in your home 84% of the time. This is something that New York has done, this is something that other cities have done, and has had important impacts on making sure that people who are at the most vulnerable end of housing, they're able to stay in their homes. We could also be using our control over the rent stabilization ordinance to make sure that rents are staying low. So during a housing and homelessness crisis, I'm proposing that we institute a temporary rent freeze until we get out of the crisis and allow people's wages to catch up to the cost of rent, which has been increasing incredibly. The final thing that I talk about, which I think is incredibly important, is that we need to be building the kind of housing that people can really afford. We're just not doing that in Los Angeles. And that requires focus, that requires use of our powers over zoning, use of our powers over so many pieces of land across the city, in order to push for exactly the kind of deeply, deeply affordable units that we desperately need, which we're just not getting right now.
It seems like such obvious measures that our politicians should be taking, especially on a local level, because they see the emergency around them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just unbelievable that they're not doing this.
I think they just haven't felt the pressures. And I think a big part of the reason why they haven't been held accountable for this, in so many ways in Los Angeles, they have hidden their powers in order to be able to stay in a very well-paid position at City Hall through which they're able to access, lucrative lobbying gigs afterwards, or to continue in politics for decades. This cannot be the way anymore. We cannot allow our city politicians who have the level of power that they do and the level of control that they do over our housing and homelessness crisis to operate in obscurity anymore.
Right, it seems like politicians do not want citizens to participate in local elections specifically, which is why people who could be the most politically engaged citizens on a national level have no idea, like you said, who their city council member is, when this is the most important thing to really affect change.
Exactly, and particularly in Los Angeles, because our city is a unique city. So we only have 15 council members for a city of